Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It is so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? It is good to see you. We got a couple big topics we can break down today. I would say it hasn't been the craziest news week, but we've had a couple really big stories since last week. I think two that really stand out, but of course we can talk about some other stuff as well. The two big ones, obviously the biggest is going to be, in terms of sales at least, is going to be Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. There was all kinds of discussion about would the state that these games launched in, would it affect sales? I even had people asking me about that on the last chat. I said probably not, and we got our answer. The answer is no, at least at launch. We'll have to see how legs are, but Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have sold over 10 million copies in the first 3 days of release. That's not shipped, that's sold. Now, there's a couple crazy stats about that. First of all, just 10 million in 3 days by itself sounds crazy, right? You just hear that number and you're like, wow, lots of games would be lucky to sell 10 million lifetime. Pokemon did it in 3 days. Well, guys, here's some more context around why that's so crazy. It's the biggest Pokemon launch ever. That's right. No Pokemon game ever has had higher sell-through than Scarlet and Violet in the first 3 days. But there's more. It's the biggest Switch launch ever. Not only is it the biggest Switch launch ever, it's the biggest Nintendo launch ever. And not only is it the biggest Nintendo launch ever, it is also the biggest console exclusive launch of all time. That is right. No exclusive game ever for any platform has ever sold over 10 million copies in 3 days. It says no data, but I'm thinking that that's probably a glitch. I'm assuming you guys can see me. It's telling me no data, but I'm assuming you guys are here. But yeah, the biggest exclusive launch ever for any platform. That's right. No Xbox exclusive has ever sold more than this. No PlayStation exclusive has ever launched more than this. No exclusive, period. I don't even think there's been a PC launch that sold over 10 million units in 3 days. So I believe even including PC, I know for a fact on console it's the biggest ever, but I can't even think of a PC launch that would be bigger than this. 10 million units in 3 days, it should be the biggest ever in the entire industry. That's absolutely absurd. It continues to show how Switch is just monstrous at driving software. I have never, quite literally never seen a platform that can drive first-party software the way Switch has. Ever, for any platform holder. If you just look at the run Switch is on with their first party in Nintendo, it's unbelievable. No console ever has been able to drive exclusive first party content like the Nintendo Switch has. So I'm sure that's going to be a giant topic. I'm sure there's probably going to be some questions about it, what it means for Nintendo, what it means for the future of this franchise. So we can talk about that. The other really big story that there's probably going to be some questions about is Monster Hunter Rise. It sounds like it is coming to Xbox and PlayStation finally, and it sounds like it's coming very soon. Insider Gaming reported on this, and for those unfamiliar with Insider Gaming, because I had some people asking me, is this a source I can trust? Am I supposed to believe this story? Well, it's run by Tom Henderson. That's Tom Henderson's website. It's a new site, so I understand why some people aren't familiar with it. But Tom Henderson runs that site, and to be honest with you, he's just about probably the second or third most reliable insider in this industry, however you want to rank them. It's really, in terms of people that are always out here putting like the rumors out there, it's basically Grubb, Schreier, and Henderson in terms of like most reliable. And Schreier doesn't even do it as much anymore as he used to, but those are like your three big ones that report on, insider stuff. Henderson's very reliable. So that's why I shared it. If this was a rumor coming from some completely random source, I don't know if I would have put as much validity into it, but coming from Tom Henderson's site, guys, it's like 95% that this is probably going to be true. So we can talk about that, what it means for Xbox, PlayStation, Monster Hunter. A ton of people are clearly excited considering how my tweet blew up on it. So yeah, we can talk about that and so much more. So if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, The way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them down into chat, and we talk about the biggest and latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can per chat. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be a super chat option. You just type a donation, whatever you want. It alerts me immediately, and I get to super chats immediately. However, as always, don't feel pressured or obligated to donate in super chat. It's just a way to help support me in the channel and also guarantee that I get to your question. And I think we're good, guys. I think that's it for the housekeeping notes off the top. I think that's it for the really big news stories. You know, there's a couple other things that came out. Persona 5 Royal has sold over 1 million on the new platforms it launched on. So that's going to be PS5, Xbox, Switch, and PC. I had some people being like, is that really that impressive? Yeah, it actually is. 1 million for keep in mind, guys, this isn't that new of a game, right? Persona's been around for a long time. This already sold over 5 million on PlayStation, so a lot of people have already played this game that are into JRPGs. You know, I always have to remind people, guys, JRPGs are not the biggest biggest genre by any means. In fact, it's pretty small compared to most of them. So the fact that over 5 million people had already bought this game on PlayStation, to still do another 1 million already in only about a month, that's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good, and that's not going to count Game Pass downloads, right? Because they said that it sold 1 million. So pretty good number for that. And yeah, I think we're good to go. So let's get rocking on your comments and questions, guys. Okay. No super chats off the top, so we can dive straight into free questions this time. Danny Patek here kicking us off. Hi there, man. I can't wait to talk about Pokemon, and hopefully we will discuss about Gotham Knights and its future after this recent update with the new mode. Yeah, I like to see that. It looks like that they're going to do a decent job supporting Gotham Knights. For anyone that missed it, it did just have a update. I don't know if it's launched yet. I'd have to double check, or if it's about to launch. That's going to have a 4-player co-op mode on there. Gotham Knights, at least in the US, seem to have a pretty decent launch, all things considered, considering, like, you know, hype for it seemed very mixed. Reviews were not great, but it had a pretty decent launch, right? What was it in October NPD? I know it was top 5. Let's double check. I think it was pretty high up there, actually. It wasn't like a ginormous launch, but pretty solid. It might have even been number 2. Let me see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was number 2. So it honestly had a pretty decent launch in the US. Gotham Knights came in at number 2 in October NPD. The only game above it was Call of Duty. So I would say this game seems to be performing okay. You know, it's not an amazing result, but it seems to be performing okay. Hopefully, long term, this thing has some legs. I could see this doing pretty decent throughout the holidays because it looks like it's going to get discounted a lot. I bought it on Black Friday because I got it on sale. And I think if they discount this pretty heavily throughout the rest of, you know, it's already been discounted at the end of November. Throughout December, you see a couple more sales. Gotham Knights might have some okay legs. Again, I don't think that this thing's going to be any kind of huge, giant seller at all, but it looks like it might do all right. And updates about like 4-player co-op and stuff, that's going to help, right, long term. So hopefully it does pretty well for him, Danny. And yeah, we'll get into Pokemon for sure once there's some more specific questions. I think we had a super chat really quick. We did, from JCat with a 5. Thank you so much, JCat. That's really generous of you. Thank you for helping mod the channel as always and being so awesome. You don't need to do super chats, JCat. I really appreciate that. Could Monster Hunter Rise match or maybe exceed Monster Hunter World sales with the rumored ports? JCat, this is a fascinating question. So let's pull up the totals really quick, because it's a very interesting question. Because Monster Hunter Rise sold a freaking ton on Switch. And that's before, right, we see the Xbox and PlayStation versions, which are definitely going to sell, you know, multiple millions as well. Let's look at this really quick. Let's look at the Capcom Platinum titles list. Let's pull this up. Okay. Okay. Allow cookies. Yeah, you're fine. Okay. Wow. Well, for some reason, there we go. Okay. So, Rise is at 11.2 million. That's only with Switch and PC. World is at 18.5 for the regular. And then once you add in Iceborne, that's another 9.7. Now, some of those Iceborne numbers, from what I understand, will include the like Legendary Edition or whatever it was called that included regular Monster Hunter World in there. I don't remember what the exact last update for World was, like just World by itself. Because like I said, it gets a little tricky once you have the Iceborne release. But some of those 9.7 million sales are just the DLC, so you can't just take 18.5 plus 9.7. It gets a little weird. JCat, I'm going to still lean towards no. I think this is going to do really well on Xbox and PlayStation. You know, there's been some debate. Is this going to do well? Is this going to not do well? It's coming so much later. Whereas World, as we know, was Xbox and PlayStation right off the bat. I do think there's quite a bit of demand for this, to be honest. I think this is going to sell millions of copies between the two platforms. I was surprised how much traction my tweet got. You know, it wasn't anything like crazy, but this thing had, over, I think it was like close to 1,500 retweets or whatever. And a lot of people in the comments being super, super excited about it. So there's clearly, I would say, demand for this, judging by the response on Twitter and how much we know World sold. JCat, I'm going to still lean towards on Xbox and PlayStation. This sells quite a bit less than World. The advantage that Rise has, though, is that it has a Switch launch, whereas World did not. We'll have to see, JCat. Right now, I'm going to lean towards World still staying ahead just because I think that the Xbox and PlayStation versions are going to sell well, but they're probably not going to sell near as high as what, for Rise, as what World did. So I'll say less, but it's still going to be millions. This is going to be millions of additional sales between the platforms, particularly on PlayStation, because it sounds like this is going to launch day one on Game Pass. Now, there's going to be people that buy this on Xbox, right? You always see that. Even Persona, which was, heavily played through Game Pass, it still sold some copies. It wasn't like a huge seller on Xbox, but there are people that still buy games on Xbox even when they're on Game Pass. I'll lean towards World staying ahead. I will lean towards World staying ahead, but Rise is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. When all is said and done, I could see Rise eventually being like a close to 20 million seller. I know it was at 11.2, but it has slowed down on Switch. These are going to have additional millions of units. It's still going to sell on PC for some time as well, right? This is going to have legs on PC as sales and stuff come. It's definitely going to do over 15 million. Could even maybe hit towards that like 18 or so, but I think it probably finishes under 20. Probably, but we'll have to see. Thank you for that super chat, though, JCat. All right, back to some free questions. Player slot available. Hey there, first time watching. Well, thank you for showing up, player slot available. Not the most exciting week ever, not the biggest turnout ever, not the biggest news stories ever, but we have a good time, I think, during these chats. So we do one of these every single week. We just talk about the biggest news in the video game industry, what it means for sales, business, but all kinds of stuff. We can talk about anything you guys want. So thanks for showing up, player slot. I appreciate it. I've had a ton of support on Twitter lately. It's been ridiculous. It's looking like I might get close to 60,000 followers by the end of the year, that's way higher than I thought I was going to hit. Hamish Lee Ford. Hey, I hope you are doing great, brother. Doing good, Hamish. Hope you're doing good as well. Been skipping live streams for a couple weeks. Oh, it's totally fine. So no idea if this has been asked, but if not, what do you expect from the Game Awards? Oh, in terms of reveals, I don't think I've really had anybody ask that. We talked a bit about who we think the winners might be, but I don't think anyone's asking about reveals. I'm expecting the new Valve game plus Elden Ring DLC. Well, Hamish, I have a feeling this Monster Hunter Monster Hunter Rise announcement is going to be there. It's probably why it leaked, and if you look at the timing where they're saying it's going to release in January, that quick of a turnaround means that it's going to be announced imminently. So this Monster Hunter Rise announcement was probably supposed to be the Game Awards. It was probably supposed to be a Game Awards reveal, and unfortunately for Jeff, that one it looks like has leaked. So I do expect this to get announced there. Elden Ring DLC makes sense if it's ready. This would be a great spot to show it, especially since it's nominated for Game of the Year, and Jeff got the original showing of the gameplay for Elden Ring, right? Remember, there was all that time people were wondering forever, when are we going to finally see Elden Ring? And Keeley actually is the one who locked that down. So clearly he has a good relationship with From Software. So Hamish, I would say if Elden Ring's DLC is ready to go, like in terms of being shown, because we all know there's no way you sell a game that sells that many copies and you don't do a DLC for it, especially considering From's games always have DLC. You know, whether it's Bloodborne, that had DLC, whether it's, the Dark Souls games, Dark Souls 3 had multiple DLCs, so Elden Ring's gonna have one. I'd say it's a good prediction to be here as long as it's ready to be shown. You know, if it's still quite a ways off, they might not, but it's a good call out. Valve's game is interesting because it does look like Valve is trying to get people to watch this. If you notice, they're doing that contest right now where if you, for like every minute that the Game Awards is live, they're going to be giving away a Steam Deck. So that seems like they're trying to get eyeballs on it. We know that Gabe has confirmed Valve has multiple games in development. He didn't even just say one. This was quite a while back. Someone was asking him, and he said that Valve's working on multiple games. So they're going to announce something at some point, right? It's not just like a mystery if they're working on something. He outright said, we got multiple games in development. So I would say that's completely possible, Hamish, again, because Jeff Keighley has a good relationship with Valve. You know, he did that documentary on them about like Half-Life a long time ago. So not impossible at all. But again, with Valve, you never know with Valve time. Tekken 8, it looks like, has leaked is going to be there. So Tekken 8, we're going to see. Final Fantasy 16 is going to get a release date. I'm like 99.9% sure about that. You know, Jeff Keighley tweeted out the like that announcement that the producer is going to be there, Yoshi P, and I happened to say I feel like this is, I tweeted it and I was like, sounds like we're going to get a release date, and Jeff Keighley liked my tweet. So take that for what you will, but it kind of seems like a stealth confirmation considering Jeff Keighley liked my tweet about a release date that we're probably getting a release date. So Final Fantasy 16 release date, I think that's going to be June 2023. They've said it's going to be in the summer. I don't think this is going to be a late summer game considering how much they've talked about. They're like in the polishing phase and that it's pretty much content complete. They're just making everything super smooth and good and ready to go. So I don't see this as late summer, right? I couldn't see this being an August release. So I think June 2023 probably for Final Fantasy 16. Xbox, I feel like, is going to have something. If they don't, it's a big miss by Xbox because they haven't really said anything since June. They need to have something here. They've basically been radio silent since June, right? There's been some cool like Game Pass announcements and stuff like Pentiment's come out, but I mean in terms of like showing you new stuff, we essentially haven't seen anything new since June. It's been half a year basically. So big miss for Xbox if they're not here. I'm not saying they got to have like an E3 level show where all of a sudden Xbox is going to show 5 games at the Game Awards, but they better show at least one game. Like Xbox needs to show something. So who knows what that could be? Could be Starfield. Starfield getting a new trailer would not shock me at all. They got to show that game at some point. I know they did a big showing at E3, but like we got to get a date and something sometime soon. I'm not going to say Starfield's the most likely, but I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like they won't do Hellblade because they did Hellblade here before. They could show Fable. They could maybe show Fable. We know Matt Booty has been wanting to show that game. Like he said in a recent interview, like if it was up to him, he would have already shown it. But Playground keeps telling him no. So that tells you that like a leader at Xbox has been trying to get you guys to see this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fable gets not a huge blowout, but like some kind of teaser trailer maybe. But Playground keeps telling him no, so I don't know. But Xbox something, PlayStation, I don't know if PlayStation will be there or not. PlayStation's kind of hard to read right now. Maybe though. Nintendo's weird because I think they're getting ready for their new console. If Nintendo's here, it'll probably be Zelda. If Nintendo's here, it'll probably be a new Zelda trailer. But yeah, that's a few off the top of my head. Jedi Survivor should probably be here. I would be very shocked if Jedi Survivor's not, because apparently it's coming out in like 3 months. So that's a few, Hamish. There's a lot that could be here. Yoda Soda, Benji, do you think DC video games will become rushed movie tie-in games since the plan is to connect everything to DC? Also, do you think WB Montreal is in trouble because Gotham Knights underperformed? Could WB Montreal get shut down, or do you think they will be given a chance and they will be allowed to ship their second game? Well, Yoda Soda, I don't know that we know that Gotham Knights has underperformed. I would say we definitely know that Gotham Knights isn't a huge success, but it was number 2 in NPD in the month of October, and only behind Call of Duty, and the sports games were actually behind it. And sports games actually this time of year are selling lots of copies, hundreds of thousands of units on NPD per month. So, it definitely sold hundreds of thousands of units in just the US in its launch. So I don't know that we can outright say Gotham Knights was like a huge underperformance. It might be, but the NPD result at least does not look like one to me. It depends though on how it's doing in some other markets. But is WB Montreal in trouble? Maybe. This game took forever to get out, and no matter what, even if Gotham Knights is an okay result, we know it's not like a giant, incredible result, right? I think we have enough info to know that. And it took a really long time to get this game out, and once it did finally come out, it did not get, fantastic reviews or gigantic sales. I don't think that WB is going to be in any rush to close studios right now, but I would say that they probably are in danger of some leadership shakeups or just the way the studios run. I would say that's a potential. Now, in terms of DC in general, for anyone that missed this, James Gunn has confirmed that WB games in the future will be tied in to the overall DC universe. We already had a report on this from Deadline about 2 weeks ago, I think, a week or two ago. And then James Gunn himself outright confirmed it on Twitter just like 2 days ago. So he confirmed that report. Yes, the video games moving forward will be part of the connected DC universe. Now, it is worrying some people. Here's my thought on why I actually, Yoda Soda, wouldn't be too worried, but this is me assuming like they're not going to do something crazy. So let me explain that. I don't think these are actually going to be tie-ins. A lot of people, I think, are feeling like, oh, if they're connected to the DC universe, that means it's going to be like when there's a Batman movie coming up, they're going to try and get a Batman game that's like the same Batman tied into like close to when that launch, like the movie releases or whatever. I don't think they're going to do that. I think what they mean is the games are going to explore parts of this connected DC universe, but they might be more side stories. They might be exploring other characters. Yes, you still might get like the Batman game that's starring the Batman from the DC universe or the Superman game. But I think they'll probably structure these games because games take so long to make, longer than movies and TV shows. I think they'll know, like, we can't really just, like, line all this stuff up. We're going to have to tell stories in the games that might be connected to the universe, so we can use the same characters and we can use even maybe the same actors. But we can't force this, like, oh, we must have this game released by this launch window because otherwise the story won't make sense. They'd be very foolish to try to force that because Yoda Soda, if they did, they could run into huge problems with that. So like I said, I think it'll be more side stories, side characters, still that connective tissue there, but not like forced release dates because otherwise that would be a disaster. Yeah, games take way longer, so it's going to be a lot harder to plan that out. You can make literally a giant movie in 2 years. It's not easy, but you see it all the time. Blockbusters get filmed and done in 2 years. Some of them take longer, but it's not uncommon at all for a 2-year turnaround on a huge show. I mean, look at like how massive House of the Dragon was. Tons of budget. Most of the DC shows probably aren't going to be at that level. And then next season's coming out in 2 years, right? You see that with movies too. So, and whereas a game is like 4 years at least, sometimes 5 years. So, Yoda, I don't think they'll be foolish enough to force the timing on these. That's the only reason why I'm not as worried about it as some people. Player slot available. I was expecting to see Crimson Desert gameplay at the Game Awards, but the Pearl Abyss November earnings call stated that they are not ready to show new gameplay this year. Speaking of which, if you have listened to the earnings call, got any insight? Well, I do listen player slot available to like all of the earnings calls I can, but I did not listen to this one. So I apologize. I don't have any additional info on this. When was the last time we saw this game? Let me see. Right, this is that one that's like that crazy looking. Like the graphics and stuff are awesome on it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whenever we're going to get an update on that. I don't know. It's a good question. I apologize, player slot available. I have not heard anything additionally about that, so I can't give you more info on it. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, and player slot available is having some interesting info here that kind of plays into what I was saying. Yoda Soda, I know a dev who worked on Gotham Knights, and while I didn't ask him that direction, I got the impression that it sold well regardless of performance issues. Yeah, it seems like it did okay. Like I said, number 2 in October NPD is pretty darn good, actually. It'd be one thing if it was number 2 in, like, let's say, July, which is like a really slow month where the games below number 2, unless it's a new release, are probably selling pretty low. But in October, you know, those sports games are selling a lot. They're selling a lot this time of year. So for it to be above all of the sports games for the month, it sold hundreds of thousands of units in the US for its debut. All right. Did I miss a super chat? I don't think so. No. Good. We're good. No super chats missed. Cameron Swear, thoughts on UK's Black Friday console sales? So I actually haven't had time to dive into the full article, but I saw the rankings. I would say unsurprising to me. I do think the results will be different in the United States, though. So let's see here. From what I saw, Switch was narrowly number 1, which I do not expect in the US. I'm just going to let you guys know that right now. From everything I'm saying, Switch will not be number 1 in the US. But I'm not surprised it was number 1 in the UK. So, yeah, so Switch was number 1. And then behind it was Xbox. And then quite a bit behind that, this is the part that was surprising to me, was PS5. I can tell you this is not at all how it's going to look in the US. So, in the UK, it was only 18% of sales for the month were for Black Friday, I believe, were for PlayStation 5. That's pretty crazy. Don't expect this result for the United States. And Xbox was 40%. So it was literally very close. Switch was 42, Xbox was 40, and then PlayStation 5 only 18. That's pretty wild. So there's a couple things I can tell you from my retail insights for the US. Part of the reason why, probably in the UK, because I did see this in the US to a degree as well, PlayStation 5 was not like why it was distantly third behind Xbox and Nintendo was because PlayStation shipped a lot of freaking consoles for Ragnarok launch. A lot. So they sold a lot of their monthly PS5 November sales right around that Ragnarok launch. If you remember in the UK, that was the biggest week of the entire year so far for PlayStation was Ragnarok's launch. They shipped a lot of consoles for that launch. So that's going to take away some from Black Friday inventory because they pushed some of their volume for the month earlier in the month to God of War than Black Friday. That was the case in the US, I would say, as well. It did appear to me from everything I've seen that Ragnarok week might have been bigger than Black Friday for PlayStation. But it was still a lot of consoles. In terms of Switch, I can tell you again, I do not expect this to be number 1 at all in the US for the month. It would be really impressive if it is, but I do not think it will be. Xbox to me has been the most impressive console, particularly during Black Friday in the US. Series S. They sold so many Series S's. The amount they shipped and the amount they sold is crazy. So I actually think Xbox is going to probably take number 1. I think Xbox is going to be number 1 for the month of November in the United States in units. I think it will not be ahead of PlayStation in revenue because keep in mind, guys, that these Xbox Series S's are $299 or during promotion time even cheaper. They were going as cheap as $249 at some places, whereas the cheapest PS5 is $399 and the most common one is actually $500 because they don't ship near as many digital consoles as their disc console, which is $500. And the Ragnarok bundle, which is the one that they sold a ton of, is actually $550. So I think PlayStation 5 will take number 1 in revenue. I think Xbox takes number 1 in units. And Switch, I don't know. Switch might take last in both, to be honest with you. If it's not last in both, best case scenario, I think, for it is second place in units. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I will be... After seeing how Black Friday shook out, I would say I would be completely shocked if Switch is number 1 for November in the US. That would truly shock me. But you never know. You know, it's hard to predict, but I do not expect that at all. Oh, and Randy, UK sales were interesting. We will see something similar to NPD? I just broke that down. Not really. Not really. I don't think so. I mean, there's some things we can carry over, like Xbox. Xbox doing really, really well. I do think that will be reflected in the US as well. Don't expect PS5 to be that far down compared to what it looked like. So no, do not expect that. And like I said, Switch number 1 would be very surprising to me. Casual Noob Gamer, do you think Monster Hunter not having cross saves will hurt sales, and by how much? Do you think Xbox with their price drops will have the lead in sales this holiday? And how do you think PSVR 2 will sell as the initial pre-orders sold out instantly? All good questions. Already mentioned Xbox. I think it's probably number 1 in units for November NPD thanks to Series S. In terms of Monster Hunter not having cross save, will it hurt sales? I don't think so. What it might hurt is people double dipping. So people that already played this on Switch, it might hurt some of them that don't want to pour all of that time back into the Xbox and PlayStation versions. But I don't know that there would be a huge amount of double dippers coming over from Switch anyways. So it might impact, I'm not going to say it has zero impact, but, I don't think it'll be a giant one just because, like I said, I don't expect like millions of people that bought this on Switch were now going to suddenly buy it on Xbox and PlayStation. I'm sure there was some people that were, but not like millions and millions of people. And for Xbox and PlayStation gamers, this is essentially a brand new game. Maybe they played it on PC, but we've talked about this a lot on this chat. There's actually less overlap between PC gaming and console gaming than the internet makes you believe. Yes, there are some people that do both. It is not a giant number in terms of like the overall gaming community. A lot of people are either PC gamers or they're console gamers. Again, that doesn't mean that there's no one that does both. There's a lot of people that do both. But in terms of the overall, if you want to look at the total number of people gaming on PC and console, they're mostly separate. They're mostly not, a ton, like 50% are playing both. It's a much smaller percentage. So for most people, the majority of people that are going to buy this on Xbox or PlayStation, they have probably never played this game on either Switch or PC. So for them, it's a brand new game, so cross-save means nothing. If you have this on PC, I'm not 100% sure why you would buy this on console, except for maybe if you wanted to get the trophies or achievements, because I doubt it has any real improvements over the PC version. That can already be 60 FPS. It can already be whatever resolution. So not a huge amount. I know it's a bummer for people that really loved this game on Switch or PC and want to play it over here if it doesn't have cross save. I'm not telling you it's not a bummer. I wish it was there, and hopefully it is. But do I think it has a huge sales impact? No. No, because most people that are buying this, it's going to be their first time ever engaging with the game. Now, in terms of PSVR 2, Casual Noob Gamer, I have the exact same opinion of it that I always have since it was announced. I always said, launch, this thing is going to sell out. So I'm not surprised that pre-orders sold out instantly in the United States. I've heard in some other markets it has not. But in the United States, for example, yes, they did sell out super fast. This does not surprise me. There's going to be enough initial demand that they'll probably sell whatever they ship in that first month or two. The big question about PlayStation VR 2 is how is it selling 6, 8, 12 months after launch? That was the problem with PSVR 1. PSVR 1 had a decent amount of sales in its first, few months. But as we all know, PSVR 1 had horrendous legs. It just did. There's no other really way around it. PSVR 1 had terrible legs. I think PSVR 2 actually, despite the high price tag, probably will leg better than PSVR 1 overall for two main reasons. The VR market is much more healthy now than it used to be. Quest has made massive inroads. I know that Facebook is taking a ton of losses on their VR experiments in the metaverse, but in terms of their install base for Quest, they have sold tons and tons. They sold tons again this holiday. They are making inroads and making VR more mainstream. So I think just the overall VR market is a little bit more healthy than it was back when PSVR 1 launched, and this stuff was all really spinning up and just beginning. So I think there's more people that are just into VR now than there was back then. So that's one advantage for it. The other advantage is I think this will have way better software support. The headset is just way better. The controls are just way better. The console that's running it is way better. It's going to be much easier to make games that work well on it. So, I don't know if this is going to be a scenario where you're going to see just giant AAA games nonstop on PSVR 2, but I think it will have a much healthier software life cycle than PSVR 1, because that headset, I have one, and I had a Quest and Quest 2. We all know that PSVR 1 was kind of barely making it on VR between the PS4's power and the controls, the Move controllers and everything. It felt like, yes, it technically worked, but the VR was not great, right? It was barely working on the PS4. I think this is going to feel much more advanced, much, much better. So I think, more games will be made for it. I don't know that PSVR 2 is going to be this giant success that sells, 30 million units lifetime or something like that. But I think it probably has a better life cycle than PSVR 1, just because I think the experience will be way better. That price is going to be an issue. Hopefully it comes down over time, but I think the actual experience will be so much better than PSVR 1 that it will probably have better legs. I think there was a super chat. Let me hit this super chat really quick. Reverse World with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. After years of PlayStation being the place to get big exclusives, it'll be interesting to see how the general public reacts to a Starfield list PS5 in 2023. Reverse World, it is going to be interesting. I've said this a lot. Starfield, I think, is the most important game Xbox has had in a long time. That's right. I think it's more important than Halo Infinite. I think it's more important than Forza Horizon 5. We went over this on the last chat, I think it was, where I was talking about that. Starfield, to me, is a game that can be a legitimate console seller, like legitimately. Guys, there are tens of millions of people that love Bethesda games outside of Xbox, right? Whether that was on PlayStation or whatever. If you look at how the Fallout games sold, if you look at how Skyrim and Oblivion sold, there are tons of people that love Bethesda games. And yes, this will be on PC, and I think it'll be giant on PC, by the way. But I think Starfield can legitimately move hardware, as long as it's good, right? The key for Starfield is it must be good. PlayStation 5 is still going to have some huge exclusives in 2023. We already know Spider-Man 2. I mean, that's going to be a behemoth. So it's not like PlayStation 5 is going to have nothing and it's going to be a terrible year for PlayStation 5. At the very least, we know it's getting Spider-Man 2. And I suspect there's at least 1 or 2 other big games in there as well. Not to mention Final Fantasy 16, which is third party, but it's an exclusive. But in regards to Starfield and how people react to it on Xbox, if this thing's good, if it's good, right? If this is the next Skyrim, if this is the next Fallout 4, it's going to move hardware. There's no doubt about it. It will be a hardware mover. So it's very important for Microsoft that this game's good. I know the delay sucks, but Reverse World, I think it was the best decision they could make because they cannot mess this game up. It doesn't matter. Literally, Starfield's one of those games that I think its importance is so high. Do not mess this up. You guys got to make sure you nail it. And I think they know that. I think that's why they pushed it. And they were like, maybe it had to be pushed no matter what. But I have a feeling that Phil and Todd and everyone knows how important this game is. The first new IP from Bethesda in forever. Not to mention this first huge flagship Bethesda exclusive under Xbox. They can't mess it up. They cannot mess it up. So, yeah, it's very important, Reverse World. Very, very, very important for them that this game's good. Yes. And it could legitimately move hardware. Yeah, it very well could. Benji with a 10 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. It's very generous. Hi, Benji. How do you feel about Sony's capability to meet the physical target of PS5 hardware? Again, you guys need to be real careful about reading too much into these Black Friday UK sales. I'm telling you guys that right now. The Black Friday sales from the UK could indicate Target will be challenging to reach. Guys, it sold a lot in November. I'm telling you right now that November 2022 was the highest PS5 sales I've ever seen since launch. I'm telling you that right now. So get ready for it. Get ready for the biggest November ever for PlayStation 5 when USNPD comes out. So now, will they be able to hit their 18 million fiscal year target? I don't know, but you guys, and I understand why that number would look alarming, but you guys need to be very careful about reading too much into that 18% Black Friday sales in the UK. Like I said, there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, because they front loaded the month a little bit, which isn't typical, but it's because God of War was such an important launch for them. They wanted hardware out there, like ready to go for that game at launch. Look at it, it was a record setter, biggest PlayStation launch ever. And 70% of those sales were on PlayStation 5 in the UK at launch. Tells you they had a lot of bundles and stuff ready to go, so people had that hardware ready to go so they could buy that game on PS5. So that's part of why Black Friday looks a little low. I can tell you that Xbox's shipments were not prioritized earlier in the month. They were prioritized for Black Friday. Same with Nintendo, to be honest. They shipped a good amount for Pokemon as well, but they shipped a lot of consoles late in the month too. So that's part of the reason why PS5 looks so low on Black Friday itself. If you notice, it's not the monthly breakdown. That's Black Friday breakdown. So I expect November to be the biggest November ever for PlayStation 5 since it came out. So this number from the UK does not mean anything to me in regards of hitting the 18 million for the fiscal year or not. That was always a pretty big target, so we'll need to see. But I would say the UK data changes nothing in my mind. If anything, what I saw from November in the US makes me think it's possible. Guys, I've never seen shipments like this for either of the next-gen consoles. I think that November is going to be the best November we've seen in this industry in a long time. I think Xbox is going to have its best November ever in terms of series. I'm not talking about peak PS4 sales or peak Xbox One sales or 360 sales. I'm saying for these platforms, Xbox is going to have, what is this, their third November for both. It'll be the biggest for both Xbox and PlayStation since the launch. They're both going to do a freaking ton of units. I'm more positive about that than I've ever been after Black Friday in the US. I work retail, so I get a lot of visibility to this. But we'll see. I'm not telling you 18 million's a lock, but I'm not worried about it, about how either of these consoles sold in November. All right, super chats are cleared. Thank you guys for the super chats. Let me get to a few more free questions. I'm on a limited time frame today, so I'm still going, but I'm only going for about 15 more minutes. Unfortunately, I got to work. Right now is retail for me, guys. It's chaos. It's chaos for me every single day. It will be until January. You're going to see me probably pretty stressed out. Pretty stressed out this time of year. All right. Ghost Tunnels, what's your thoughts on Activision Blizzard merger? We've talked about this a bunch. Do you think if Sony and Microsoft and Activision find a reasonable agreement, it will go through? Do you think established IPs will stay multi-platform? My thoughts on this are mostly the same as they've been for a really long time, Ghost Tunnels. I think that this merger this acquisition, I think it is going to still go through in the end, but I think Microsoft will have to have concessions. That was one of the big questions. Can Microsoft get this through with no concessions, right? You saw Brazil approve it with no concessions. You just saw, I think it was Serbia, somebody else just approved it with no concessions. I think the same for Saudi Arabia, if I remember right. I think those are the three that have approved it with no concessions. That's not going to happen. We have enough info now. We can pretty much definitively say that that's not going to happen with the FTC, the CMA, or Europe. They're going to ask for concessions. So I do still think this is going to go through, Ghost Tunnels, but it's not going to go through where no strings attached. My hunch is that there's going to be legal binding language that says that Call of Duty must remain on PlayStation for an extended period of time. Now, whether that's permanently, I don't know. I don't know if they'll force outright permanent, because you can do that in language. You can have the language say in the contract that as long as PlayStation has a console, a current console, right? It wouldn't be one of those things if, let's say, something crazy happened and PlayStation stopped making consoles 30 years from now and you'd still have to make a game for it somehow, right? You could have it in the language as long as there's a currently running PlayStation platform. It must be supported by Call of Duty. I don't know if they'll go that far. I would say that the 10-year minimum is probably guaranteed, probably a minimum in legal binding language. Call of Duty must be on PlayStation for at least 10 years. I think that will absolutely be there. Potentially even longer, but at least 10 years, that'll be there. I don't know so much if there will be language for the other IPs, possibly. However, Overwatch isn't leaving PlayStation anytime soon anyways. Makes no sense. Diablo, I don't see leaving PlayStation anytime soon, really. Doesn't make much sense. Ghost Tunnels, my opinion of this deal is probably the big, giant multiplayer flagship games that Blizzard and Activision already make. Probably, no matter what, aren't going anywhere from PlayStation anytime soon. That's what they're built on. I think new IPs will probably be exclusive, right? That's probably how they're going to structure this internally. Hey, if Blizzard's making a new IP, that's an Xbox exclusive, of course on PC as well, but not going to other platforms. Hey, if one of the Activision studios is making a new IP, that's going to be exclusive. And probably these big giant, Overwatches and Call of Duties and stuff, those probably won't leave. But they're going to probably have to make concessions, yeah. Probably primarily around Call of Duty, because that's the main sticking point through all of this. Dang good. It doesn't actually say dang, but I'm going to say dang good 75. Game Pass Monster Hunter Day 1. Xbox just killing it. Lego Skywalker Saga coming to Game Pass December 6th. Xbox, stop, please. I can't keep up with so many games. Initial pre-order saw it quick, maybe 1 million. Okay, so in regards to Game Pass, yeah, they've had a great last few months. There was a period of time there, like during the summer, where the Game Pass output wasn't great. There wasn't a ton of new releases coming out in general in the industry. There wasn't really a ton of stuff just hitting in general. But these last few months, September, October, November, and December, really good months for Game Pass. So I will give Microsoft that. They closed out this year very strong with Game Pass, especially considering the lack of first-party titles this year. They really made up for it with a lot of great stuff on Game Pass, including, Persona 5 Royal on there. You got High on Life coming up on there. You got, it looks like Monster Hunter in January. You had a Plague Tale Requiem on day one. You've had Vampire Survivors, which I just started, which is a ton of fun. You had Pentiment, which is a great game, and more. They really closed out the end of the year strong. Those last few months, really great results for Game Pass in terms of releases. They did. They made up for the summer quite a bit, because this summer wasn't great. There was some cool stuff in there. Power Wash Simulator was a lot of fun, but there wasn't like a lot of big games. But they really did a great job at the end of the year with Game Pass. I agree. Pierre485, great to see you, Pierre. Benji, just wanted to come say hi. Love your content here on YouTube and on Twitter. Even if I'm not able to see most of the live chat, keep up the great work. Well, that is very kind of you, Pierre485. I really appreciate that. I'm assuming you're the same Pierre from Twitter. I follow you. You do great work as well, Pierre. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. I think we had a super chat hit. Let me hit that super chat as we're getting down to like the last 10 minutes. Highlander001 with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Highlander. It's great to see you. Benji, I see Microsoft agreeing to 10 years and Game Pass cannot raise the price for 3 years. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. You're thinking there might be something in the language about price increases. Interesting. Not impossible. Sony is only talking Call of Duty, so the others maybe. Yeah, if you notice, most of Sony's arguments on this, they rarely talk about the Blizzard side of it. You don't really see them talking about Overwatch. You don't really see them talking about Diablo, etc. Like maybe every once in a while they mention, but you are spot on, Highlander. Like 90% of Sony's commentary is around Call of Duty. And it's because Call of Duty has been such a juggernaut on their platform. That's the main thing they're worried about. To be honest with you, if this was a scenario where, let's say, Blizzard was a separate entity, right? It wasn't Activision Blizzard, it was just Blizzard. I don't think Sony would be fighting Microsoft near as hard on an acquisition. I think it's literally Call of Duty. If we look at Call of Duty over the years on PlayStation since the PS4 gen, they've made so much money on microtransactions on that because you guys, sometimes people forget, but Sony takes a cut of every single piece of DLC that's sold on the PlayStation Store and every single copy of a game that's sold. They get a cut by being a platform holder. So think about all that money Warzone's generated over the years, all that money that each Call of Duty release has generated over the years. That's tons of money for PlayStation over the years. So I see why they're so concerned about Call of Duty leaving. So Highlander, I do agree. Like I said earlier, I think most of the concessions that Microsoft will have to agree to will be around Call of Duty. That's what's going to be like the main the main concessions. I don't know that you see a lot there in regards to Blizzard and stuff. Maybe a little bit, but it's going to mostly be Call of Duty. So yeah, I agree. 10 years at minimum, like you said. Microsoft agreeing to 10 years. I agree. They're not going to do less than that. It's going to have to be at least 10 years. The Game Pass thing you raise is interesting, that they won't raise prices for Game Pass. That would be something that, to me, Sony doesn't care about, but I could see legislators caring about it, because there has been a lot of discussion about Game Pass and subscriptions in this. So that is interesting. That is an interesting wrinkle I didn't really think about, but it could be something that they put in there. But yeah, I think I agree with your overall take, Highlander. It will mostly be Call of Duty. I agree with that. It's mostly going to be Call of Duty. They have to make concessions around. I agree. I agree. And thank you for that super chat. Baumangi. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. I apologize. If Sony successfully lobbies governmental agencies to stop the Microsoft-Activision deal, how long will it be before Activision puts their entire library of games on Game Pass? Now, that is an interesting wrinkle. What if Sony stopped the deal and Microsoft still struck a deal to get their games on Game Pass? Because it's not impossible. Look at what happened with EA, right? All of EA Play, or whatever it's called, EA Access, I guess, is what it is. That's all on Game Pass, right? So it's not impossible. Even if the deal got shut down, technically Microsoft could strike a deal to get the games. What I will say is I just still in the end don't think Sony will be successful in stopping this. I think they're going to be very successful in slowing this process down enough to get concessions. It's still very hard for me to believe that they will actually full on be able to stop it completely. So I don't think this is a scenario we're going to see, but B, it's not impossible. If they did, though, I still think actually Activision would not make this deal because they have a marketing deal with Sony. And I have a feeling that they will probably renew that, honestly. If the Microsoft deal falls apart, there's going to be some bitterness there. And I don't mean bitterness in terms of like Activision is going to hold it against Microsoft and be like, wow, you guys screwed this up kind of thing. But think about this. Microsoft has essentially put Activision's entire business in limbo for years. You know, this has been, by the time it's done, right? By the time it's done, it's going to be at least a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. Who knows, depending on how long this stuff all gets dragged out. Like, they've put their entire company in limbo. And Microsoft's going to have to pay them billions if this falls through. I don't know that Activision will be in a rush to be buddy-buddy with Microsoft if this falls through. I don't think it's going to be like, completely damaging to the relationship where now it's a horrible scenario. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't think they'll be like in a rush to be like, we're best friends after this falls through. I suspect if this falls through, the marketing deal will get renewed with Sony. And that contract forbids Call of Duty from being on Game Pass. So you might see some of the Blizzard stuff come over, but not. I don't think you'd ever see Call of Duty on Game Pass if this deal falls through. Yeah, Bigelow, CNBC's David Faber downplays the Politico report about the ABK deal. Yeah, I watched Hogue Law's breakdowns on the Politico article and the New York Times article. He did some great coverage of that on his channel. Richard Hogue, I think his first name is Richard. I just know him as like Hogue Law. But he did some great coverage of this. You can watch his videos. He's a lawyer, so he has great insight into this. And he has mostly said the same. He's mostly said that he doesn't think FTC is actually going to sue. He thinks that this is probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the takeaway I had, he thinks a lot of this is posturing for concessions. It's basically, what's probably happening is the FTC is probably basically signaling, hey, we're willing to do this unless you come to the table kind of thing. It's probably what this is, a little bit of grandstanding to be like, hey, Microsoft, you better offer some concessions up. So I agree. I don't think this ends up probably going to lawsuit. Not impossible, and Hogue did not say that it won't go to lawsuit. But he thinks it probably still doesn't. It's probably mostly posturing and signaling from the FTC to get Microsoft to on board with concessions. Chupamar OC, thoughts on CD Projekt Red's Q4 earnings report? Amazing. It was their best Q4 ever. It was literally the best Q4 that they've ever had. They mentioned that that Edge Runners did really well for them. The anime, they outright said outperformed expectations for them. It was a bigger hit than they thought it would be. It had a real impact on Cyberpunk's sales. CD Projekt right now is headed in an amazing direction. They really are. They still need to execute. You know, we've talked about this in the past. You can't just blindly trust anything they say now after what happened with Cyberpunk. You know, that kind of trust that they had before Cyberpunk is earned. You don't just, you know, freely give that. So you don't want to outright trust everything moving forward from CD Projekt Red until you see it. But they are moving in an excellent direction. They really are. Looks like that. I was very impressed at the extent of that Witcher update for free. I mean, for a free next gen update, they could have been lazy about it. You know, and when I say lazy, I hate the term lazy devs. But we have seen some next gen patches, including for a game I love, Ghost of Tsushima. Adore that game. It's PlayStation 5 patch, not impressive at all, and that was paid for. I think it wasn't super expensive. It was like $10, but that was not an impressive update by any means. This is free, and it's got global illuminated ray tracing, improvements to like all areas, textures, gameplay improvements. Incredible. This is an incredible free update. The expansion, Phantom Liberty for Cyberpunk, is looking very impressive. They have a huge staff on it, so this is not going to be a small expansion, guys. It's not going to be one of those things that you're going to beat in like 2 or 3 hours. If you look at the workforce they have on it, it's a freaking ton of devs. It's going to be a beefy expansion. They're moving in the right way. You know, we don't want to just freely trust anything they say yet, but they are headed in the right direction. Very much so, Chupamar. Very, very much so. 2 super chats coming in right at the end. Benji here with a 5. Thank you, Benji. That's your second super chat. Benji, when do you expect Switch 2 announcement and release? And do you expect the next 3D Mario Kart 9 to be cross-gen? So yes, on those last 2, I do expect that because I think that there is almost no... I'll just say it. There's no doubt in my mind yet now. Switch 2 is next fiscal year. It is. Switch 2 will be next fiscal year. Now, does that mean next calendar year? I don't know about that, right? I don't know that it's going to be out by the end of December 2023. Switch 2 will not be out later than March 2024. I'm like basically positive about that. Switch is really declining right now. And when I say really declining, again, anytime you talk about declines, people want to like kind of like almost viscerally respond and like, what do you mean? It's still, look, it was number 1 in Black Friday in the UK. Yeah, but it was still down year over year, right? What we're talking about when we say declines, it doesn't mean that like suddenly the sales have collapsed. It just means it's slowing down, guys. There's just no way around it. There's no way to look at it. The Switch is slowing down. It is now years past its peak. It is going to be replaced. Even if it's still selling a lot of units, it's going to be replaced with a successor, and it's going to happen next fiscal year. I'm about 99% sure of that. So by the end of March 2024, Switch 2 will be on the market. I am essentially sure of it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying it's going to be outright March 2023, right? That's a huge window. It's all the way from, you know, April or whatever, all the way to March of the next year, right? It's a full year's worth of time. It's going to be next fiscal year, though. So the question is how does Nintendo announce that? They won't announce anything this fiscal year, I don't think. The only way you get an announcement about Switch 2 this fiscal year, because that only goes till March. The fiscal year is almost over for Nintendo. The only way that happens is if this thing's launching with Zelda. And I'm not convinced of that. You know, there's some people that are. I don't want to tell you outright there's no way this thing is going to launch with Zelda, but I don't consider it super likely. I feel like we would have more reports if it was launching that soon. So I'm leaning towards more, this is probably holiday 2023 or early 2024, probably more towards the end of that fiscal year. So, Benji, you won't get anything this fiscal year, so you won't get anything before March, the end of March, unless it's launching with Zelda. And otherwise, they'll just announce it sometime next fiscal year. They could announce it as soon as the fiscal year starts. You might hear about it on April or whenever they report their earnings for this fiscal year. They may outright say, hey, our next Switch is coming, because investors are going to start asking very aggressively. They've been asking for a while. they're going to be outright asking aggressively nonstop now. When's the successor? When's the successor? When's the successor? When's the successor? They're just going to be drilled about it nonstop. So they could, as soon as that next fiscal year starts, they may just say generically, not show you the console, but if it's coming later in the fiscal year, they may say, hey, just to let you know, it's coming this fiscal year. We have nothing further to announce today, right? But they could signal to investors, our next platform, it's coming this fiscal year. That wouldn't shock me, to be honest, for them to say that. But yeah, it just depends on the release timing. But like I said, I do expect it this next fiscal year. So that could be an early announcement. It could be a later announcement. It really just depends. But don't expect it before the end of March unless it's launching with Zelda, which to me still seems very iffy. Highlander001 with a 5 super chat. Bobby Kotick gets $300 million if the deal dies. If the deal closes, Bobby gets $1.2 to $2 billion, as reported by CNBC. I am shocked. Yeah, but Bobby's going to get paid no matter what. And I hate to say it, some people are really upset about this. And I mean, I am too. I don't want Bobby Kotick to get a lot of money considering everything that's happened. But that's just the way business works. That his deal is structured that way. He's going to get paid out. It sucks, considering all of the, not even just accusations, essentially proof we have, given how many, listen, it's one thing to have an accusation when one person is saying something, right? You still always want to take that accusation very seriously, but if one person's saying something, you don't really know, right? Unless you have that investigation, you can't just outright know that what they're saying is true. The issue for old Bobby K here, it ain't one, it's not two, it's not three. It's like tons and tons and tons of people saying that he ran this company horribly and all kinds of issues. So, I don't want Bobby Kotick to get any money for considering all the things he's done, but he's going to. That's just the way these contracts work. He's got it in legal binding language that if there's any sort of buyout, he owns a ton of stock, dude's going to get paid out. That's just the way it works. It sucks. But to see somebody like that get rewarded, but it is what it is. Nothing you can do about it. It's legally binding language. But it does suck. Yeah, I wish he was not getting $1. If it was up to me, he would get $0. But, when he owns all that stock, that's how it works. You're buying the stock, and he's going to get a ton of money for it. He's a major shareholder in Activision. Okay, I basically have to go. I wish I could do this longer. Let me just try and pick out one or two more questions. So I'll go for like 5 more minutes, and that's it. Like 5. I cannot push it longer. You guys know I wish I could push this way more, but I just can't. I literally have a heart out. So let me just grab one or two more, and I gotta go. Sounds PB7, what did you make of the Splinter Cell 20th anniversary weeks ago? Yubi revealed concept art and said they want to implement elements from Chaos Theory in the remake. How desirable is that in today's market? All I would say is I am very glad to see they're bringing Splinter Cell back. People have been asking about it forever, but I would keep the budget low. Yes, I would not go crazy on the budget for this because I don't know that Splinter Cell is a guaranteed huge seller. I think it can sell, right? I don't think it's not going to be able to sell any units. I would not give this a huge budget, though, if I was Ubisoft. I'd be very careful on putting too much money into Splinter Cell. We'll have to see. If it's a huge hit, then yeah, then you go forward and you invest more in it. I don't know that a Splinter Cell, the remake, is going to be a huge hit, but maybe. It might. I wouldn't give it a crazy budget, though. Michael Yu, are you excited for Callisto Protocol? Benji? I can't wait to play it tomorrow. The Dead Space games are some of my favorite games of all time. All I can say is that no super info here. I have a feeling it's going to review well from some of the things I'm hearing. Got a feeling it might get some pretty strong reviews. I know that review embargo is a little scary because it's the same day of, but all I'll say is I have reason to believe it's going to review well. So I think I'm very excited. Very, 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 very 10 out of 10 excited for Callisto Protocol. Cannot wait. I've been excited for this game since the day it was announced. I love horror. I love sci-fi. It's sci-fi horror, and it's made by the guys that made Dead Space. Yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited. And like I said, we'll see. Maybe, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be too worried about that review embargo from some of the things I'm hearing. I think it's going to review well. I'm not saying 90s Metacritic, but I think this will be a strong 80s. Strong 80s for Callisto, I believe. Like one or two more. Do you expect Callisto Protocol, spiritual successor / new experience, or Dead Space remake, name recognition / familiar IP, to perform better, financially as well as critically? I think Dead Space will launch bigger. I think Dead Space will be a bigger launch. Which one sells more over time will just be about quality. It'll be about quality. Dead Space remake looks excellent though, but so does Callisto Protocol. So, if I had to bet, I bet Dead Space will launch bigger because of that name, the name brand IP recognition, like you said. Legs, I don't know. Legs is all going to come down to how good the games are. Nah, that nailed my prediction. Anthony Johnson, Insider Gaming, posted this morning, Final Fantasy 16. Perfect timing. Okay. My stream just died, so it's perfect timing to call the chat. I apologize, but I do have to go anyway. So sorry about that, guys. If you can happen to see me, that was the perfect way to end the stream with the stream dying. Stay safe. Play some games. Subscribe to my channel if you are not already. We do one of these live chats every single week. Like the video if you haven't. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Follow me on Twitter if you don't. Odds are very high that you already follow me there because my Twitter is way bigger than my YouTube. But just in case, follow me over there if you're new to Benji-Sales me. And I'm out of here. All right? Later, guys. See ya. And I will see you guys either very soon on Twitter or I will see you next week here on YouTube. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.